back to Good Day Northern Michigan on this beautiful Friday morning. This week, Michigan Attorney General Dana Nessel announced 13 felony charges against former Speaker of the Michigan House of Representatives, Lee Chatfield. Chatfield from Emmett County is accused of orchestrating a scheme of self-enrichment against state, campaign, and non-profit funds.
The Attorney General's office additionally charging Mr. Chatfield's wife, Stephanie, with 2 felonies, but the state says there was not enough evidence to file charges connected to how the investigation all started with an alleged sexual assault. Here with us to discuss the case and from the perspective of his own client as well, which we should point out in full disclosure, local attorney Jamie White, who's been on the show many times before, is back with us again this morning. Hi, Jamie. How are you?
Good morning, guys.
So give us your take on this this case. Obviously, you've got a unique perspective and a tie to the case as well when you heard the news this week.
Yeah, so, for the last 2.5 years, this has been ongoing. As far as the financial side of things, we really weren't a part of that. I mean, Mrs. Chatfield was able to add her perspective as to what occurred. She's not a sophisticated business person, but she saw checks being written and that sort of thing, and she participated. But this really all started when she just couldn't live under what she called a cult environment. Not within only the Chatfield house, but the church that they ran and that she ultimately went to school to, and so on and so on. So, we reported this to the authorities. We didn't file a lawsuit. Nobody asked for money. There was nothing of that nature. Excuse me, guys. So ultimately, we've gotten no explanation that makes any sense as to why he's not been charged with a crime. There's never been an allegation that he physically assaulted her in a way where she didn't have control, right? So, the allegation was always she was a child, he was a teacher, or in this case, the athletic administrator. And, I've had experts calling me from all over the country asking me for an explanation as to what happened, because there's no gray area in the world of teachers can't have sexual affairs with students. There's nothing there. I mean, and we've seen it a million times. We've seen, women fall in love with 13-year-olds. They have a baby, and they go to prison and they get out, and then they stay together, and that's fine or great or however you perceive it. But for the Attorney General to not take this on is really, really perplexing at this point in time. We've tried to wrap our head around it the last couple of days. The representative of the Attorney General rattled off a couple of cases that didn't seem to make any sense to me. And in some large part, she was a babysitter. Miss Chatfield's very comfortable with me sharing her story, and her father was he had a very serious dependence on alcohol, which ultimately killed him. And this is what we see with predators. Like, they find the kids that are vulnerable.
Jamie?
And that, yes.
Yeah, I'm sorry to interrupt, but before we get too much farther into that, can you just clarify, because we just talked about charges against Lee Chatfield and also against his wife, Stephanie. The victim or alleged victim in this case that you're referring to is not his current wife, Stephanie. I just want to make sure we're clear on who's
yes, that's correct. Okay. The victim I'm referring to would be his brother's wife. Wrap your head around that one, but it was not Stephanie.
Okay. And talk to us about, 2 thoughts that come to my mind. One, the Attorney General's office did say, although there wasn't the burden of proof to make charges that, in the case that you're referring to, that more charges are still possible down the road. So there may be something else in the future. But I'm curious your take on the burden of proof just in general in cases like this. Could you just address what standards might need to be met legally Again, in general terms, not necessarily specific to this.
Yeah, no, that's a great question, because I think a lot of times people do concern themselves with, well, it's he say, she say, and how do we prove it and how do we not prove it? And that's almost always the case with these sexual assault cases. I mean, oftentimes if it is an assaultive nature of a case, there will be DNA evidence or, potentially witness evidence. But, most of the times these cases are, he did this to me or she did this to me. And that's what this case was. So, Mrs. Chatfield, Rebekah Chatfield, was prepared to, she didn't come to this with any expectation of consequences to Mr. Chatfield. She just wanted to be told, she wanted to escape, as a polite way to put where she was living. And then ultimately, some level of accountability.
Yeah.
So
she wanted a sense of closure from the ordeal, which is completely understandable. Now, we only have a couple seconds left here, Jamie, so just really fast, lightning round kind of. The 13 felony charges that are going through at this time, could you tell us just very briefly what those encompass?
So very briefly, basically fraud on every single level that a politician can, involve themselves in. They took hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars, actually millions of dollars, to the Peninsula Fund, and used it for his own personal reasons. And the public hasn't even been made aware yet, quite frankly, of some of those reasons. But I could tell you a lot of them involve trips to Vegas, women, and paying off personal credit cards, and just everything that you would expect a politician not to do if you're giving them money to support a particular cause. And this particular cause is supposed to be for the public interest. So that it's appalling, and he's going to prison for it, I suspect.
Yeah. Well, Jamie, we are up against the clock. We got a packed show today, but I thank you for your time.
Yes,
appreciate your insight,
so
of course, as a connected attorney to the separate case in this. And of course, want to just point out that these are charges, allegations at this point, and he still has not been proven guilty of anything, just for the sake of making that record clear. Jamie, thank you so much for being with us.
You bet. Great to see you guys. Take care.
Have a good day and a great weekend, Jamie.
Hey, you too.